Ask the Podcast Coach for January 20th, 2018.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is, that fun-filled music. That means it's Saturday. It's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. That means it's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I am Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. And joining me right over there, Jim is out on assignment. I think he'll be out for a little bit. He's got that whole high school thing he's doing with kids and interns and that whole education thing that he does. So I mentioned on Facebook today that I would be all by myself. And the one and only Nick Suberling from Cincinnati Soccer Talk jumped in. So Nick, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. I'm going to do my best Jim Collison impression this week, coming at you live from Perrysburg, Ohio, where it is a balmy 34 degrees.
Hey, when it's above like 10 in Ohio, we're like, hey, grab the boards. We're going to the beach, man.
I'm putting some shorts on and we're playing outside.
Yeah. So we are at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. If you would like to join us, simply go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join and preferably with clothes on. You will jump into the video with us. We had the one, were you here the one week when this little kid that was all of maybe 13 jumped in with no shirt on?
Yes.
And we're just like, okay, this is uncomfortable.
Awkward.
And yes. And so the other thing that if you haven't seen on Facebook, this showed up in the mail this week. There's my 2017 podcast award winner for technology for the School of Podcasting. So, and it's great because it's an award and you could probably take somebody out with this thing.
Even you know what that means now, Dave, is you need to win a podcast award for Ask the Podcast Coach.
That's it.
And you could really shove it in everybody's faces.
That'd be fun. But we're at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. And which just dawned on me that everybody is there except me. So if you have a question there and you don't feel like coming on live, you could do that. But Nick, you said you had a couple things we could talk about. So let's jump into those while we're at it.
Sure. I know a lot of us podcasters were real big into gear talk. So I figured let's dive right into some early morning gear talk. And it's kind of because of my podcast story as well. So I'm killing two birds with one stone, Dave.
All right.
So my podcast, Cincinnati Soccer Talk, we cover a soccer team in Cincinnati called FC Cincinnati. And coming up here in a few weeks, they're going to be heading down to Florida for their preseason training camp. And so because of my podcast, I get to make the trip and go down and cover the team for the whole week. I will be down there for a whole week and hanging out with the team every single day. And so I needed to figure out a way to A, get my podcast studio down there, and B, figure out a way where I can get 3 or 4 people on camera at the same time and be able to record and either stream live or record videos. So present to you a new mixer.
Oh, I've almost bought that like 5 times.
This is a Behringer, if I'm saying it correctly, Xenix. I believe that's how you pronounce XENYX 1002B. And the B stands for battery. And you can see back here, there's a port you can remove this little plate and you can put batteries in and you can run your mixer off of battery power. And the reason I need that is because I'm going to be at a massive soccer complex. I can't imagine there being a lot of power outlets nearby. So I had to find a way to be even more portable than just buying a smaller mixer. So this mixer is battery powered. It's got 5 XLR inputs, so I can have potentially up to 5 people on camera. And it's got a mixed minus. And it runs on 2 9-volt batteries. And if you need phantom power, which we won't because we're going to be having dynamic mics, you could also throw in a third battery that would run the phantom power as well. So really looking forward to using that piece of gear down in Florida.
And we should state the obvious. I'm assuming it also runs on electricity.
Yes.
Okay.
There is the port here, your typical AC adapter power in port. So yes. And here's the plug for that as well.
Have you had a chance to play with it yet?
I turned it on. First of all, I turned it on. I haven't put any batteries in it just yet. I've run it off of electrical power for the time being. I've plugged in each XLR mic just to make sure each channel works. And that's about as far as I've gotten.
Because the thing I like about this mixer, why I almost bought it, it's the smallest mixer I've ever seen that actually has faders. And I think you have, it looks like three knobs for your EQ. I'm not sure what that would be called.
Mid, low, and high. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of just bass and treble, you've got a mid in there, and you've got an auxiliary send. And I thought for a podcaster, sometimes there's a whole bunch of extra knobs that you don't need.
Right.
You got control room out and all this. And I think this has that too. But to me, it was like, wow, this has sliders. It's got the auxiliary out. And I didn't realize it ran on batteries too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it can run on batteries. And as Emily just stated in the chat room, this is only $100.
Yeah.
That's it. $100 at B&H Photo. That's where I got it. I'm really looking forward to putting it to use. And of course, I'll give you a full report after my trip down to Florida.
That'd be cool. Yes. If you are listening to this after January 20th, if you go out to askthepodcastcoach.com/197, I will have a link to that in the show notes. That's pretty cool. I'm glad you bought it, because I've almost bought that numerous times, because I think that would be a great microphone. Am I really? Okay, more coffee. A great mixer. Started with an M. A great mixer for podcasters, just because I don't think there's as much of a, oh my gosh, I guess maybe the other thing, and it sounds stupid, the knobs are spread out more.
Yeah.
And so it's not like, I usually have a little Behringer behind me. He's hitting the microphone, but I don't. Well, that's pretty cool, man. And the battery thing that's a bonus, especially if you're, like you said, you're someplace where you can't go, or think about if you went to an event. Let's say I take it down to Podfest or Podcast Movement or something like that, and want to do a quick interview. And some people just take their portable recorder and a bunch of microphones, but it's like you said, you're gonna have a bunch of people, so you need more than two, maybe. So, and
it's small enough that it could probably fit in my book bag. That I could just hang over my shoulder and just kind of feed the cables out, because they're sliders. I'm not worried about those moving as I move in the bag. As far as the levels go, I could set the levels, put the mixer in my bag, and just have the cables kind of fed out. And that way, all I'm dealing with is just XLR cables. So we'll see. I'm like I said, I'm excited about my trip down to Florida. Even more excited that the team is going to give us the access that a lot of people don't get, which is remarkable for us, since we are podcasters, and I'm really excited about that.
Well, I know in the past you try to you had access to some of the players and things like that. Are you having any more luck with the team promoting the podcast, like the front office?
No. Okay. Which is surprising, because the last episode that we did of our show, we actually had the head coach of FC Cincinnati on, and now the players themselves, they share. The head coach who was just on this past week, he is very helpful. He shares when he's going to be on, but for whatever reason, and it's just has always been this way, the team itself just does not want to share our stuff, and that's fine. I'm not bitter about it. I'm not upset about it. The fact that we get the players and the fact that we get the coaches on, it's awesome. And I never got that access when I hosted my Bengals show. So I'll take it. Yeah.
Because you get good content. That's the beauty of it. And so that'll keep people coming. So that's cool. So how long have you been doing that show now?
Well, we just celebrated our 100th episode this past week. We started it. Thank you. We started February of 2016. So just a little under 2 years ago.
Nice. Still having fun?
Loving it. And it helps out. I've got a great cast, a great group of guys that we rotate in and out. That I think we're up to 11 guys now on my show that come in and out. We have a lot of staff writers that are posting blog articles. So it's really coming along. It's growing leaps and bounds here in just a little under the 2 years. So I couldn't have asked for, I was a little hesitant when I was doing my Bengals podcast, and I gave it up. Not a lot of podcasters can say, I'm quitting a show that's getting 25 to 3,000 episodes, 2,500 to 3,000 downloads per episode.
Wow.
And I quit it because I wasn't having as much fun as I had been. Mm-hmm. The team, well, they're the Bengals. That continuously let us down year after year. And I know it could be worse. I could be a Browns fan. But yes. We won't go there. But I got to a point where I was dreading getting behind the microphone. And that should never happen for your show. And if that happens, that's when it's time to go. And it just coincided with FC Cincinnati coming along. It was their inaugural season. And I found something else that I was passionate about.
That's it. Yeah. That's, to me, when people say, well, how do you know when it's time to hang it up? When you consistently are getting behind the microphone going, I mean, I've kind of let weekly web tools go by the wayside. I told them, I'm like, I actually did one. I'm like, hey, from this point forward, I'm not turning on the microphone until I find something that's really, really cool. And I said, so, don't unsubscribe unless you want to or whatever. I said, but it's not weekly, because it was already not weekly web tools. It was kind of like whenever I can get to it. But I was spending 4 hours in some cases a week looking for something to talk about. And then I would go, well, yeah, I guess this will do. It wasn't like, oh, wait till I find this, wait till I tell you guys about this. It was like, all right, here's another video thing that lets you do blah, blah, blah. It's a lot like the other 5 video things that we've talked about that, nothing really new. And so I just was like, this isn't fun anymore. And I just was like, so I shut that down and started the Alexa Cast, because I was really into the whole Amazon gizmo, and I'm still enjoying that show. So,
and Dave, that's why when you hear not just yourself, but other podcast coaches say, podcast your passion, because it's so much easier to get behind the mic. It gives you that extra motivation to find the content. And when you're not passionate and you've lost that motivation, it shows through the mic. I mean, it shows when your audience hears your voice. You don't have the energy you usually do.
Yeah.
It really does. And so that, to me, I felt guilty getting behind the microphone and faking it. You know what I mean? I felt like I wasn't being genuine with my audience, folks who tuned in live, folks who downloaded every week. It was just disingenuous. And so I had the guilt of, I'm just putting out a podcast because I know you want an episode, and that's not fair to them either.
It's Tuesday and I told you I'd have one. So,
right.
Yeah. Steven has a great suggestion. If you ever want to bring that thing back, just start podcasting about the actual band from the 80s, the Bangles. You've got all the SEO there. It's just go to town. I mean, Walk Like an Egyptian. I mean, yeah, what was the other one? Turn Around. I don't know.
I only know one song. That was it.
Yeah. So that would be one to do. But yeah, and the other thing is, like, Cale Nelson is a guy, he does Ham Radio 360, and his audience kept growing and growing, and it was a lot of work to put together a show. It's really good. And he went to a sponsor and said, hey, you kind of signed on for this, and my audience has like grown significantly since then. So we would like to raise the rates on the advertising. And the advertiser said, no. And so Cale said, all right, I'm not doing the show anymore. Because Cale has, Cale has a tribe of children.
Oh, right? Wow.
That's his Christmas card. One of the coolest guys on the planet, and his kids, he does I think it's this one. His Milam is his one son, and Milam does a podcast. It's called Milam in the Middle, and just a super nice guy. And he's a stay-at-home dad, I believe, or was. But anyway, it was like family podcasting, and it used to be the podcast, helped bring in some cash for the family. But he was noticeably missing in some family things, and he just went, you know what? Don't think so. And so he shut it down and started. And he said that the payoff on the family side, once he did that, was extremely noticeable. And he's like, and so now he does that show occasionally. If something comes up and he's got extra time, but it's not a big deal. And I think he was going to do a Patreon thing. And so, you believe it or not, I know this is all about starting your podcast. You can actually quit, and the world will go on.
Yeah, so, and at the time, Inside the Jungle was getting, like I said, 2,500 to 3,000 downloads per episode, and we were up to, I think, when I shut down the show, I was getting $700 a month in Patreon support.
Yeah, that's hard to turn down.
It is, and I did it, and I'm super thankful that thankful is not the right word. There are community members from that podcast that I do miss that relationship where contacting them on Twitter, having them engage with me on the show. I do miss that. And I miss my co-hosts. I mean, those guys were really fun to record with. But again, it was just about
now.
My heart wasn't in it.
Did the Patreon like maybe not push, but did that add to the guilt?
Yes.
Yeah.
It absolutely 100% added. I've got these folks who are contributing every month, and I felt an obligation. Yeah. And again, it was, I'm not enjoying this. I'm not putting out the quality content that you're paying for. It's not fair to you who are giving the hard-earned money every month for me to just go through the motions. And so I shut it down. And fortunately, the audience, they understood.
Yeah. Well, and that's because Kale did the same thing. He said, look, here's the deal. You know, I'm going to go be a dad. And I said, are you going to tell me that there's going to be somebody in your audience that goes, no, man, what do you mean you're going to be a dad? He's like, nobody's going to tell you, you can't do that. We're more. No. So he didn't get any flack. You know, life went on. And I would pretty much guess he's going to be more happier in the long run.
Sure.
So I don't know.
And the good news is that I've replaced that. And it's not really necessarily income because I'm, you know, now that I have a staff, I can't just, you know, pocket that money that I'm getting now for Cincinnati Soccer Talk. But we have gotten to the level of listener support. We're pretty much on par with where I was on Inside the Jungle when I shut down that show now with Cincinnati Soccer Talk. So I've gotten back to where I was financially from donors from our listeners. So
nice.
That money is being saved, is being used for stuff for live shows. You know, we've bought in a few different mixers for the guys who are down in Cincinnati. For those of you who don't know, I'm in Perrysburg, Ohio, so I'm like 3 hours north of Cincinnati. But the rest of my cast and hosts and writers and staff, they're down in Cincinnati covering the team, doing a great job of it. So when they go and do live shows, and they, you know, they'll reach out to me and say, hey, we need microphones. Hey, we need a mixer. Hey, we need a speaker. I've got that money to put towards the show. So
nice. Well, speaking of Patreon, thank you for the lead in. I do want to thank my patrons. If you go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome, you can be an awesome supporter. Just like Shane from the spot. I can never say this word. Of course, my microphone's in the way. That's why. Spybrary. That's a cool name. I love the fact that that's like you've made your own brand. Jonathan from weeklyawesome.com. You may have heard of this guy, Glenn the Geek Hebert. You can find him at horseradionetwork.com. Josh Rivers at podcastingexperiments.com. And last but not least, Max Trescott from aviationnewstalk.com. And again, if you'd like to be an awesome supporter and keep the lights on here, well, I've got some expenses coming up. That's going to be fun. Feel free to go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and keep the lights on here. And your support is greatly appreciated. So the other thing, I'm going to put this link into the show notes. It's interesting because we've heard now where Spotify is, they're basically opened up the doors, at least for Libsyn people. I'm assuming there's another door somewhere if you're not on Libsyn to get into Spotify. I think the thing with Libsyn is we actually pull their stats over into your Libsyn dashboard. And there's an article on Engadget that said they announced, I believe this was yesterday, that it's launching a new multimedia format called Spotlight that will pair visual elements like photos and videos with podcast, audiobooks, and other content. It's the first big feature from Courtney Holt, Spotify's head of studios and video, who joined the company last September after Tom Calderone left in August. When Holt was hired, Spotify said they will be focusing on expanding premium video content as well as developing podcast and audio program offerings. So it says, we are excited to launch Spotlight, a new format that merges great storytelling, news, information, and opinion with visual elements, all delivered in playlist form across a number of content categories. Playlists play an important role in the daily lives of our users and bring them closer to the creators they love. I will say, one of the things I love about Spotify, because I'm a premium member, I put out the $10. I love going in on Monday and seeing what they've recommended for my weekly playlist. Because I found a band this week, he said, trying to pull up his Spotify, something Eagles, not the Eagles, but I think it's the guy from I love that cocaine, Buck Cherry. Okay. That's a weird thing to just blurt out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm trying to find the name of it. Screaming Eagles. I guarantee you that's got to be the singer from that. I can't tell because I'm using Spotify on my iPad here. But the thing that I'm interested in is the whole visual element with audio, because it's one of those where it might work, it might be cool. I don't look at Spotify when I'm playing it. I hit play and then I minimize it and let it go because I'm usually listening on a computer. And if I'm listening to it at the gym, again, I'm not looking at it. There was a thing many moons ago that were enhanced. It was invented by Apple, enhanced podcasts, to where you had chapter marks and you could say, at this point, display this picture. And Apple doesn't, I don't think even Apple supports their own format anymore. I think it might work in iTunes desktop, but I'm like, so to me, it's kind of a, hey, here's a new feature. And I'm like, I don't know do you get excited when you hear that, Subs?
No, and I'm a Spotify premium user as well. We've got the family plan. So we've got myself and my wife and my 2 kids who I'm getting sick and tired of opening up my Spotify and all of a sudden seeing a new playlist in there. Like, where did this come from? Oh, Ben was on my iPad. Okay. I'm the same with you. I hit the play button, I hit the shuffle button, and then it is away. I don't see it. I don't look at it. And the fact that you said, did you say that Spotify is going to have video?
That's what it said in the Engadget thing. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It says here, Spotify hasn't really found a direction when it comes to video. The streaming service developed a handful of original video series, including Traffic Jams and Landmark. You know, those just like everybody's talking about Landmark. No, I've never even heard of it. Not long ago, but Spotify decided to cancel many of those shows. Shocking. Last October, as part of a shift in the video strategy. Those shows never really picked up much traction anyway, but the platform has played with other types of video. Earlier this month, in what appeared to be a test, a video loop was paired with superorganism song instead of the typical static image, and Spotify began including video in the playlist like Rap Caviar last year. Sure. It started to really push its podcast offerings last year. That is true, at least in the desktop version. I now see a podcast thing, and when I click on it, it's like, hey, look, it's all the other podcasts that I see every place else. It's like This American Life and blah, blah, blah. So yeah.
Now, are you using Spotify to listen to podcasts? I'll be honest. No. My show is on Spotify, but that's not where I go to listen to podcasts. That's not where I go to discover podcasts either. Again, it's just, and I feel like we kind of said this ad nauseum. It's just another place, another directory to have your show so that maybe other people can discover your podcast. But I'm a Pocket Cast user. I have been for many, many years. And again, I love that app, but I'm not going to go to Spotify. I mean, I go to Spotify for one reason, and that is to listen to music and to just make my work week feel like it's going a little bit faster.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if it's because I'm a podcaster or what. I love Overcast, and you're going to have to come up with an app that, like, I don't know, free pizza or something with every listen to get me to leave that thing. I got an email this week from, I forget the name of the app, but it was like, there's Castbox is one that's like, hey, this is the new thing. They have better search. And I'm like, I don't really have a problem with search. You know what I mean? It's like, even in iTunes, the search is horrible, but I can still find a podcast to listen to.
Right.
And, and so it was something like Pupil or something with a P. And I was just like, it was like, this is the best thing. And we're listening to podcasters and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, unless it's like I said, unless you come up with something way outside of the box. And my favorite thing you've got to have this with Overcast. I use this all the time is I have the premium version. I think it's $12 a year. I can upload things to overcast.fm and it will show up in the app. So like if I do it, what I like about that is it's really easy. I have it set so that if I upload something, it goes into a playlist that I have, very creatively named uploads. And so if I take the audio from a webinar or, something that's like, it's not a podcast, I can throw it up and listen to that. And that to me that's a deal breaker. If you want me to go to another one, I'm like, can I throw things into the app that's not a podcast? No. And then I'm not leaving. So,
well, Mark said something interesting here in the chat, Dave. Rob Walsh from Libsyn, who you're very familiar with, says that Spotify has a very high percentage of podcast usage, though. So clearly a lot of people do use Spotify to listen to podcasts. Now, my guess is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, those are folks that aren't podcasters. That's my guess.
Right. Which is a good thing in a way. It's a different audience because we need more listeners.
I agree.
But I'm trying to pull up my stats. I think the last time I checked, a little bit like Stitcher, I'm getting about 3% of my audience is coming from Spotify. So if I look at an episode here, okay, so my last episode, let me make some notes here. As of today, 1,479 listens. If I go up to survey said my Spotify stats, assuming that they're uploaded or updated, because they sometimes have a problem with that, and they have not updated, which is kind of a bummer. Let me make sure here.
Well, speaking of stats, and we'll while you dig through that a little bit, Dave, I've got a little bit of a qualm to pick with Libsyn.
Okay, excellent.
And again, this is,
and we want to thank Nick for coming on the show. All right. Yeah, I can't get my stats for my latest episode, but the last time I checked, I was getting about 3%.
This is extremely minor, and this is very nitpicky of me, but ever since the new stats have come out, the new format, I liked when I logged into Libsyn, I could immediately see total downloads.
Yes. And
I don't see that now.
Oh, well, here, let me, let's do this, shall we? Because I get a lot of stats questions. And so,
do you know what I mean though? Like, I feel like ever since the cutover, it's kept track of stats from that date, but it doesn't have. Oh, wow. Look at that.
There we go. So
fancy.
There's the school of podcasting. And so if I go to stats, it looks like I have 112,000 total.
That's not correct.
That is not correct. Let's back that up. That is not the full picture.
Right.
So what it is, I've had 112,000 downloads since November 1st in the new system. If I click on the little blue clock, it says, hey, you've had 1.6 million.
Oh, okay.
You had 150. And you're like, well, that's kind of, all right, I got the answer, but hey, you made me click for it.
Right.
And then, so if I want the total downloads for the episodes, if we scroll down, they're here.
Yep, I see those there always. Yeah.
And if I also click on episodes, I can, and this is sort of by downloads, by the way. If you ever wonder why does it do that, it's so like my top, I have some PDFs here that have been downloaded a lot. But if I click on release date, there's my first episode. It's been downloaded 8,000 times. My last episode, again, is 1479. So you can get the totals there. Now, if I want to dig in to the Ask Dave Anything episode here, I can click on that and I can see here's the download. And you can easily, like if you want to zoom in on this, I can just drag this over. And there's your typical podcast kind of thing. So what I mean by that, he said, thinking of the audio people, is you have this big spike at the beginning, and then it slowly trailers off. And then, I'm getting 40 downloads, 28 downloads a day for that. Over here, I can see that a big old chunk of them, 1,647 of the 1,701 came via my RSS feed. And you almost think this doesn't work, but here on Twitter, I had 19 plays on iHeart. No, that's my app. No, this was iHeart, I think. No, that's Twitter. This is iHeart. 9 plays on iHeartRadio. I had 4 plays on my app, and apparently no plays on Spotify, at least for that episode.
Will the Spotify show up in that?
Actually, if I click on this, because I do have Spotify stats over here, and this is what I was looking at before, I don't see my latest episode. Let me see if I can. Oh, here's the Ask Dave Anything. Okay, so I had 6 downloads. So let's do the math on that. So it was, what I say, 1470? No, that's 1700. So if we take 6 divided by 1700, it's time for fun math with Dave.
It's a pretty high percentage.
That is 0.3% of my audience is coming from Spotify.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So not a huge amount. But here's the fun thing, doesn't cost me a thing to do that. So but there's that. If I go back now, if you go, but Dave, I want to see like when you're in your stats, and this is from November to January. If I ever wanted to see like how many downloads did I get in the month, did we do have weekly totals here at the top and monthly? That was not there when these stats first rolled out. People said, wait, where's the monthly totals? So we put those in and we're always adding stuff. But the one thing that is missing is I used to be able to see how many downloads my episodes got in a month. Right. Like how many were in November. So I can come up here now. It's not as easy, but I can click here and say, look, let's go. If I want to see what happened in December, I can say December 1st through December 31st, run this. And I can see now that these episodes had, X amount of downloads. I can export that as a CSV. And then if I wanted to see what happened in November, I can go back here. So it's more clicking, admittedly. It's not a picture. I can run that. And so you get the idea. So that's probably the biggest request I get as a support person is I really miss the 3 month. Used to be able to say, here's your total downloads, December, November, and October. And because to me, I'm all about, I don't really care how many, because I know what the podcast is going to look like, a big spike and then right. So, but a lot of people like to see, hey, a podcast that I released this month or a podcast I released 3 months ago is still getting downloads. So, but
so yeah, I guess the nitpicky side of me is like, instead of me having to click that little tiny blue button and the total downloads, just show the whole number.
Yes. Preaching. In my case, you're preaching to the choir.
Okay.
It is that way. Back. Yeah. Anytime. No. And we're always open for feedback. Like I said, the weekly and the monthly tab was based on user feedback. I believe they're looking at bringing back the monthly, the 3 month thing. And some of it is the biggest, well, besides the IAB and all that other fun-filled stuff of redoing the stats, one of the biggest requests we got was your stats need to be mobile friendly. And so that's kind of the tricky part, because how do you have super cool, in-depth stats that work on a mobile device? That's right. the fun part. So it's interesting, but yeah, that's and there'll be things coming in the future, I'm sure, as life goes down, but as things go along. But at any rate, so was that your second thing? I was gonna say, was that your second thing? It's not so.
That was kind of a spur of the moment thing.
It's but the bonus option. Yeah.
So, and I know you do this a lot with your show every week here, you and Jim both. I was scouring through, and I'm not the podcaster that's going to comment on stuff I see in the Facebook groups. I just don't feel like it's my place to do so. I just am not. You're not a get off my lawn kind of guy. No, or maybe I am a get off my lawn kind of guy. Maybe it's the other way. I tend not to try to bother anybody.
Okay.
So, but this week there was a question asked. What are the best things, or what tools do you use to take your show live and take callers?
Yes.
And I happen to be the first person to comment. I explained my process, it's a little more different than others.
Right.
And you were here earlier this fall, so you saw my setup right here in the studio. You sat 4 feet from where I'm sitting here, and it's a lot different than what a lot of people do. And so I'm using a program called Call-In Studio, which you have used in the past. Yeah. And I stream live using Wirecast, and then I use a platform called Joycaster, which then distributes the video feed to Facebook and YouTube. So I'm only sending out one feed rather than uploading 2 feeds, absolutely killing my bandwidth. Now that's not the issue that or why I'm bringing this up. The reason why I'm bringing this up was some of the feedback from that post about how going live isn't the strength of podcasting. That was the quote. That going live isn't the strength of podcasting. And I absolutely disagree with that statement. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but if you're looking for engagement, I can't think of a better way to do it than to do it live. And so I kind of threw it out there, when somebody responded to me about that not being a strength of podcasting, I absolutely disagree. And I think as podcasters, I think we box ourselves into that label. You know, we box ourselves into that label of being audio only. Yeah. That's what a podcast is. We have to start looking at ourselves as we are content creators. We are producers. We create a product. Podcasting is just a distribution method.
That is correct.
We have to start looking ourselves as content creators. We are producers, and podcasting is just one way of distributing that content that you produce out every week. You could, produce it and distribute it via YouTube, via Facebook Live. But as far as engagement goes and being able to take phone calls, like sometimes we do here on Ask the Podcast Coach, going live is a fantastic method. And I think it sharpens your skill behind the microphone as well.
Yeah, it's I'm with you on that. It's the reason I do this show. One of the reasons that keeps me doing the show is the fact that we have a kick butt chat room, and a community that shows up. So yeah, in terms of audience interaction, absolutely, hands down. Hey, somebody's actually, now here's the fun thing. Is this an actual call?
Guess we'll find out.
We'll find out. Hello. I bet this isn't
Hello.
it. Hello.
Hi, this is Nick Leeson. I'm calling you from U.S. Home Improvements. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Nick? You're on the air with Ask the Podcast Coach. Are you going to try to sell me something?
Oh, I apologize for that. I am so sorry. I'm going to put you on our do not call list right away.
That would be great, Nick.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Excellent.
And that's why you do it live, folks.
That's why you do it live. Exactly. Well, I should have known because that was my actual phone number, not the number that's on the website there.
Oh, man.
I need to start doing that. Boy, that got him off the phone real quick. The next time somebody calls, I am from the IRS. I am here to, and like, hey, thanks. I always love the fact that it's like, my name is Ken. No, your name is not Ken. So my apologies for anyone offended by a bad, whatever accent the heck that was.
You should have gone into Binky right then and there.
What's up, man?
And
yeah, that'd be
great.
Him.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah, no, that was not shenanigans. But I was going to do calls today, and then Nick saved me, which is awesome. But there is a phone number on the website, at least for today, 567-342-6224. And the way I'm doing this, just so you guys know, if somebody wants to call, we could do that. Except Nick, you won't be able to hear Nick if he comments. Is I have my phone plugged into this, which goes into my mixer. So,
well, if I would have thought about it, we could have thrown up my call-in studio line, and then you would have been able to hear it, and I would have been able to hear it. But yeah.
And I was gonna actually go back and re-sign up for call-in studio, and I'm like, I'm not doing that for one episode, But it's fun. I could actually call myself if I wanted to, So if, and what's happening now is that is actually a Magic Jack number that I have, so I'm not giving out my stuff.
Oh wow!
And so I'm not giving out my phone number, and then this is just
Hello, can I talk to Dave?
Dave,
I want to talk.
What's the best microphone for $30?
$30?
That would be there are no microphones for $30. There's a horrible echo on this now, isn't there?
You got to get a little further.
And a trumpet shake. And oh yeah.
So that's how so if it's just you, now the bad news about that, of course, is with call-in studio, if somebody calls and you're on the line with somebody, there's a there's a queue. With that, if somebody calls, I'm just like, hey, I'm on the phone with somebody else. Can you call back in 5 minutes? But you would think if it was live. And the other thing I've determined, at least, when your show is small, we used to beg people to call, and we'd have like 2 calls. I think once I had 2 people in the queue, but most of the time it was like, hey, we got a caller, you're right in. So I think that's a problem you have. That's one of those good problems to have. I have too many callers, but we never ever had that problem.
We, when I was doing the Bengals show, I would do a post-game show immediately after the Bengals game, and it was that instant feedback. So we would have probably, is that a caller?
That is actually a call.
All right.
Hi, you're on with Dave and Nick. What's your question?
Hey, Dave. This is a Liquidy from Utah. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, I have a quick question for you. I am going to be doing my first podcast in just a little bit, and I'm going to be doing it on the road. And I was wondering what suggestions you guys have for on the road podcasting.
Got it. And when you say on the road, is it going to be like, are you interviewing one person, multiple people? Is it just you doing solo stuff?
So it's going to be me and one person, and she owns a tea shop where I live in Park City, and so I'm going to her tea shop to interview her.
Nice. Are you going to be sitting down to do the interview, do you think?
Yeah, we're going to be sitting down in the back of her tea shop at a table.
So for me, I would say just get either a Zoom H5 or a Zoom H6. It's a little portable recorder. And then you can get, your typical ATR 2005. These microphones are less than $100. And you can get little cables. Here's actually a cable, which you can see. I know I'm talking to you on the phone. This is like 2 feet long. And so you could put the recorder on the table, get some stands, and then plug it in, and you're good to go. Because the recorder actually has recording levels. He said, grabbing his camera here. So you can see here that as I talk, that everything's backwards. So I can adjust my recording volume on this as we're doing it, and you're done. You just hit record. And then when you're done, you can grab that recording, throw it into Audacity or whatever you're using, and add your music if you have any, and you're done. So it's super easy, and it's the recorder is fairly small and good to go.
And there are some.
And I want to have a question for you. Your other co-host had mentioned Joycast.
Yes. Nick, she's asking about Joycast. Of course, Nick, you can hear her, right?
I can hear her, but I don't think she can hear me.
Yeah, she can't hear you. Okay.
What question does she have about Joycast? What question do you have
about Joycast?
I was just wondering how effective that was as far as pushing it forward to your social media platform, and are there any other similar programs like that will push your podcast into social media that other people like?
Got it. You can hear Nick's answer on the website. You won't be able to hear him on the phone.
Okay.
So Nick, go ahead and answer.
Sounds good.
So the difference, what Joycaster is a platform that takes a live video stream and it distributes it to Facebook and it distributes it to YouTube. So it's not like it takes a recorded podcast that you're going to publish to like an RSS feed and distributes it socially. Joycaster is really just for taking the video stream, allowing me to put one video upload stream to one server, and then Joycaster takes that data and distributes it to YouTube and to Facebook. So it has nothing to do with your podcast. If it's something that you're going to record and post after the fact, Joycaster wouldn't really be involved there. If you're going to be using, I know Libsyn can distribute to Facebook, it can distribute to Twitter, as we just saw with Dave's stats. But if you're looking to record, if it's just going to be something where you're sitting down with a person and you're not streaming it live, most likely you're not going to be using Joycaster.
So thank you for the call. That was fun. That makes me want to bring back the phone now.
Well, and I was going to say, you mentioned the Zoom. I've had a lot of success with the Tascam DR40. Yeah. And it's a little bit cheaper than the Zoom, but it does allow you to plug in 2 XLR mics. It gives you the same amount of levels.
So that's that's really the big feature of that Zoom is you can plug 2 XLR cables into it. And so if you can get that and Tascam's a great company as well. I've had a lot of the recording stuff back in the days of being a musician. And I recommend, it's weird, shorter cables are more expensive. I never understood that, but you will thank yourself when you're not tripping over 20 feet that's tangled up around your I had cable once that I used to have a Zoom H4H, just an H4, the plastic one, and I had all this cable and it got wrapped around my chair, and I got up, pushed my chair out, and literally the H4 went flying across the room. And that's why I now have an H5. So that's a way to do that. And if you're like, Dave, that's not in the budget, I have gotten away with interviewing people with a phone to my face and then a phone to their face. It's not the prettiest, not the most professional looking thing, but I've also done, and I don't have the clip. Doggone it. Maybe I can. Maybe you'll do that post show.
Well, speaking of phone, Dave, There is a device, and I've used this before as well. It's called a Ceramonic Smart Rig Plus. I'll hold it up to my camera here, and just as you can see, it's got 2 XLR inputs there on the bottom. You can control the volume. There's 2 volume knobs you control, and then this plugs in. It's got a TRRS connector, which allows you to plug into your smartphone. So this right here could plug into your smartphone, and then you could use your smartphone to record
as a recorder. That's what's that called again?
The Ceramonic Smart Rig Plus. I believe it was $99. I got it on Amazon.
Dude, how that's a find right there. Ceramonic. I think I went to school with her. Ceramonic, one more time.
SARAMONIC Smart Rig.
Smart.
And it runs on a 9-volt battery. And it can also plug into a camera as well. So a DSLR, if you're in the field shooting with a DSLR.
Yeah, Ceramonic 2-channel XLR. Yeah. Boy.
And also has phantom power if you need it.
Look at Nick just bringing the A game. Look at all the toys, man. Everybody's just like, yay, more things to play with. That's really, to me, obviously you've used that, I'm assuming.
I have used it. I used it at the beginning of the season last year for FC Cincinnati games. I would go down to the games, and I had a gentleman who shoots the game for us, taking pictures. And after the game, I was like, "Hey, is there any chance I can get you to shoot some video of me interviewing fans immediately after the game?" And he was like, "Sure." He's got an XLR, and I wanted to have a handheld mic to go into that XLR, and so, into the DSLR. So many abbreviations here. So I found that device that allows me to plug in a microphone with the XLR cable, which I needed the length to get kind of further away from the camera, so we weren't, breathing down each other's necks. And so, yeah, I found that device, and so it worked out really, really, really well.
Nice. Now you mentioned the Tascam DR40.
40. Yep.
$178 right now on Amazon. What do you think the difference is between that? Like, that does not operate as a USB interface?
That I don't believe it can. Right. To be fair, I never tried to use it as a USB interface. We would use it for our high school football broadcasts, and we would plug in. We would have these headsets. That's how grab it. It's a broadcast. I'll even put it on.
Excellent. Look at him all set to go.
So I've got this broadcast headset that I would use. Can you hear me, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. So we would plug this XLR into the bottom of the Tascam. We would use this for our pregame interviews with Coach down on the field, and then we would take the XLR cord from this broadcast headset. It has 2 ends. It's got the XLR for your mic, and then obviously a headphone jack, which I have plugged in right here into my Behringer headphone amp. And so we couldn't hear each other through the ears, but we could at least sit there. We're close enough where we could record the interview, and then we would take that Tascam up to the booth, and then when it came time to go live with Coach, we would just hit the play button on the Tascam, and voila,
go to town. And what model of headset is that?
This is an Audio Technica BPHS1.
Okay.
So, and it goes for about $199 the last I checked.
Pretty cool.
And do you notice a significant difference in sound quality?
Yes, for me.
Well, and to be fair, I'm not going through my compressor either, so
right. But it doesn't.
That has a little
bad.
bit to do with it.
The biggest thing is all of a sudden you went from sounding cool. Well, not that you sound bad, but all of a sudden you sound like this. It's
sure.
Like all the bass is gone, and I'm like, yep, that's a headset. But the nice thing about a headset, I'm not a huge fan of them, but the one thing that they eliminate is the whole thing where Dave's going around and doing stuff.
Yeah, I could turn around like this and look at my flag. I can look at my shelf. You had no idea that I'm not away from my microphone.
Yeah. So very cool. Fun toys.
I know.
I
didn't think I was going to break this out today. Sheesh.
How did you find the Ceramonic gizmo? Just typed in phone interface and
I think I believe what I was doing at the time, because I knew we were going to be shooting with a DSLR camera, I went to the one and only Ray Ortega.
The one and only.
And I said, hey, I here's what I'm going to be doing. And I know you do a lot of shooting in the field.
Yeah.
And we kind of brainstormed, and we sat down. I believe we were on a call. We were on a Skype call, just chatting, and we were on the Googles, and he found this, and we gave it a shot, and it's worked out great.
Because I'm looking at that going, okay, that, you know, if you don't want to bring the H5, it's about the same size as like a portable recorder, but it's just, I don't know. I like the fact that it's cool. And, what's the middle button there? I see where you have, let me zoom in on that. Oh,
so the middle button here
is phantom power.
I don't know if you see that on mine. There's phantom power, and then there's the on off as far as, are you going to be going into a camera, like a DSLR camera, or are you going to be going into a smartphone, which you can kind of see the smartphone is there on the right.
Yeah.
So you can kind of designate which setting you're going to be on. I think what it's probably doing, and I'm just speculating here, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe by switching it over to the smartphone, because I don't think on these little lightning adapters, because I've got an iPhone 7 now, which means the headphone jack is gone,
right?
Which is kind of a bummer. I don't know if these are line in or mic in settings, and I know there's a difference.
We were talking about that on the Podcasters Roundtable, how you blew up something.
I did, yeah. Yeah, we were going line in into an iPad with a mic in adapter, and that did not go well.
Oops. So
yeah,
awesome. Well, that's cool. I'm sitting there thinking, because on one hand, I had total gear acquisition syndrome there. I was like, "Ooh, that's cool," but now I'm looking at it, going, "Well, wait a minute. Am I really gaining anything? Because I'm not bringing a portable recorder, but now I'm bringing that thing instead and using my phone as the recorder. So I'm still bringing two things."
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool in a way.
Yeah, and again, it's really more that device is really mostly for flexibility.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can use that to go in straight into a DSLR camera. You could use it to go into your phone, and I don't know if a Zoom, especially if you're recording video, if you're at a podcast conference and you want to do a video interview with somebody,
right,
and you want it to sound good rather than all the constant noise being around you, you could plug that thing in and have a handheld mic and still be able to shoot the video.
And that goes right to the video, not right? Am I correct in that?
This would plug into the lightning adapter,
right,
which then would plug into the bottom of your iPhone 7, and then that's your microphone.
Got it.
So the iPhone automatically picks that up as, oh, this is where the audio is coming in from. So when you're recording the video, it's going to have this audio with the video.
Nice. Pretty cool.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, if you have a question again, simply go out to askthepodcastcoach.com/live is where we're at for another 5 minutes. And then we'll be doing some post show here in a bit. Or, hey, if you want to call in, that was fun. I have turned down the volume of the phone so that when it rings, it blasts our head off. Because that's the other thing. I turned it off and I'm like, wait a minute. I have to have the phone ring because otherwise I'll miss the fact that somebody's there, because it shows up on my phone. But then
I like the phone ring, though. It makes me feel like I'm listening to like a morning show.
That number right now is 567-342-6224. And if you, again, I'm using a Magic Jack number. I could have used Google Voice and then forwarded it. That was the one thing I was worried about. Like, if you forward it to your actual phone number, does the person calling the Google Voice see your actual phone number? Do they just see the Google Voice number? And I was like, you know what?
Yeah, I don't think that they do that.
Yeah, so
thankfully.
And I think Magic Jack is, I don't know, $20 a year.
They're still around?
Yeah, apparently it's working.
I figured Magic Jack would go down with all the Radio Shack stores.
Yeah, but you know what? I wanted a Radio Shack so bad last night because I was working on a cable. I had to find the cable. He said, moving away from the microphone, that allowed me to plug my phone into, basically the headphone jack kind of thing to an RCA. And so I was able to find that at Best Buy. And I get home and I swear the minute I bought one, I found like 7 in my house. I was like, well, because I was like, oh, cool. And I opened up a drawer and there's like 2 of them there. And I'm like, oh, but what I still need is I need the little 1/4-inch adapters to plug those into and then plug it into the mixer. And that was a Radio Shack thing. No Target, no Walmart, no Best Buy had that. I'd have to do it. So if I'm going to buy those, I'm going to get them at Amazon, and which was cool because I think you can buy like a pack of 4 for like a song.
It's funny you mentioned those adapters because every so often I'll go on a kind of a spending spree at B&H or Amazon, and I'll be like, man, I do I have any 1/4-inch adapters? And so I was going through my behind me. You can kind of see the shelf. That's where I keep all my gear. I was going through my cabling this week and preps for my Florida trip to see what all I needed. And as I emptied it out, I found like 8 1/4-inch adapters. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with all of these? I've got 8 of them just collecting dust here at the bottom of my bin. Again, it's better to be prepared so that you don't have to make that run to Radio Shack or to Best Buy to get that piece of equipment.
Is there it'd be fun if there was like one left, like one Radio Shack out in the middle.
I believe there are actually.
Beaver Mud, Mississippi.
I think that they, some of these Radio Shacks, they weren't corporate owned. They were like franchise. Maybe they were franchises or something. Because I think I could be wrong about this. I think there are some down in Louisville. My sister lives down there, so I'm fairly certain that they've got a couple down there. But as far as the big company, I think they're long gone.
Yeah. I kind of miss somebody pushing batteries on me and asking me about my phone service.
Mark City's coming back, says Emily in the chat room. I didn't know that.
Really? Mark says, this isn't a question, but I'm getting bored of seeing people posting about how to make money with their podcast when they've only just started. Where does this misguided perception that podcasting is an easy route to making money?
Oh, you didn't know, Mark? If you start a podcast, you're going to be a millionaire.
Here's the thing.
Right away.
Here's the thing I think that everybody ignores. Rob Walsh, when he does his Libsyn stats, he says, you need at least 5,000 downloads if you want, the Casper mattress, stamps.com kind of sponsor. And I hear so many people say, well, I'm going to start a podcast and then hopefully we'll get sponsorship. The number in the last episode was 7%, like 7.8%, get enough downloads to get a sponsor. But I'm like, so if somebody said, hey, Dave, you could make it as a musician. Now, keep in mind, 93% of the musicians never make a dime, or they don't make enough to make a living. But go ahead, you just start playing away, buddy. And I'm like, everybody seems to be ignoring the fact that only 7% get enough downloads to get, again, a major sponsor. There are the Glenn the Geeks of the world that are, niching down and things like that. But and then, my buddy Ravi from subscribeme.fm, he has his own podcasting product, and he has a great video. I'll have to find it. And he breaks down Pat Flynn's numbers that because Pat puts out his income, and the amount of money from his that's his income, that's sponsorship, is tiny. And so I'm not anti-sponsor. I'm just, everybody seems to think I'll start a podcast, I'll do 10 episodes, I'll get a sponsor. And I'm like, it doesn't kind of work that way. So
no, yeah, it's not a get rich quick kind of medium. Never has been and never will be. The way, and I hate that podcasters or people get into this thinking that, because for folks like you, and I've been doing this since 2015, or not 15, 2005, sorry.
I was going to say, you've been around longer than that. Wait a minute.
I need my coffee too, right? Says the guy who doesn't drink coffee. We've put in hundreds of episodes. We've done thousands of episodes, some of us, thousands of hours of putting work into this. It's not, and I wish people wouldn't look at it that way, because yes, it can be a business, but it's really about, I want to bring back that word, Dave, passion.
Yeah.
And being and sharing that passion with a community. Can you make money from it? Sure. But that really shouldn't be the driving motivator.
No, it's not the way it works typically. It can be. So
it can. And again, that percentage is extremely small.
Right.
And maybe if you have a big name or you're a famous person, you've already got that built-in it factor. But
yeah. So stick around if you're here live. We'll do some post-up. We're going to start wrapping things up. Nick, where can people find you?
CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com for all the latest surrounding FC Cincinnati and lower division soccer here in the United States.
And you can find me at schoolofpodcasting.com. Use the coupon code LISTENER. That's LISTENER. There is an E in there. I've seen people type in listener, like, because I guess E's are evil when they think it's the internet.
Like governor.
No. Yeah, governor. It's listener. So, and Emily's pointed out that if you want to call in, it's just Lord Hambag. That's the phone number. I am Lord Hambag. Right. So,
thanks for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.
Stick around for some post show. Thanks to the chat room. We'll be right back in just 2 seconds.